an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece episodes 506, 507, and 508. Straw Hats in shock. The bad news has reached them. Reunited with Dark King Rayleigh. Decision time for Luffy. And back to our captain. A jailbreak at the Sky Island and the incident on the Winter Island. In these episodes, our friends are hearing what happened and determined to get back and be with Luffy during his time of need. And a lot of them are beating themselves up for wasting so much time. To which I say, yeah, what were you thinking? Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Florian for commissioning this episode, and Florian is here with me in the chat. Delighted to see you, as always. I did it again. It's Michael today. I always do this, and I'm so sorry, Michael. Please accept my sincerest apologies. I put Michael on the schedule for another few episodes in June, I think, and I had to credit them to Florian because Michael doesn't have an account on my booking system. So I have really got to be on top of this from now on. You guys, these episodes, it's such a weird mixture of shit that just does not matter at all and stuff that I definitely want to know about. Do you know what I'm saying? We are all over the place. And it's really funny how much the different activities going on with each of the characters vary in terms of how actually plot heavy they were, how difficult it's going to be for them to extricate themselves from the situations that they're in. Like the overall sense for me with these three is I am glad that we're coming back together, that they're going to try and find their way back. I still don't really have a clear idea how far away each of them is from him. I'm assuming they are not equidistant from him, that they weren't all shot into opposite directions like an asterisk, but that they are sort of irregularly placed. I don't know how that power works or anything. So I'm trying to consider who I think would be able to catch up with Luffy the fastest. And I really have no idea because as we know, the climate of a place doesn't mean anything in terms of the distance from a place, because the way the climate behaves here just doesn't make any real sense. So what I'm hoping for is I was just trying to think through, and the first person that I would really like is Chopper, because what I was considering was who is the most sensitive out of our crew? Who is going to be a person who, when somebody has suffered a major loss, is going to be able to really listen and be there in a way that feels like you're being seen and heard. The only thing is, I don't remember if Chopper was with them in Alabasta, you guys. I feel like Chopper wasn't part of the crew by then. Am I wrong? Because if he wasn't, I don't think Chopper's ever met Ace. And I think that if he hasn't, I would probably prefer Usopp. Usopp and Luffy are just really able to bond both over their enormous appetites and their goofy, childlike approach to everything in the world. So I feel like Usopp would be able to both celebrate Ace's life and be like, yeah, that guy was a badass, and also cry and also eat And I don't know that anybody else is going to be able to like really hold him down like that. Obviously, the ideal would be that everybody would show up at the same time and we'd all have an amazing party where Sanji cooked for everybody and Robin was the one who like wrote this very moving, maybe historically based eulogy of some kind, and Frankie would make a amazing mechanized memorial for Ace. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But I have no idea how this is going to shake out. Florian says, I was thinking about Chopper as well, and he also has birds, so it feels right. He also has birds. Oh, you mean like in terms of maybe being able to like fly back to see Luffy? That didn't occur to me, but that's a good point. He was in Alabasta. Okay, he was. It's been such a while, guys. I really have to admire the fact that you guys are able to keep things so clearly in your minds over time about the show, because I've only been watching it for several years now, and I am really losing some of the information from the beginning of the show 500 episodes later. And y'all must watch this so like repeatedly to be able to hold it and really keep it in your brain. Either that, or you just consume a lot of ancillary material that sort of like reinforces the memory in your head. But it is just so much to keep straight. I don't know how you guys do it. His island was the one before that, the Winter Island. Okay, I couldn't remember if it came before or after Alabasta. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so let's start with 506. The Straw Hats are in shock. This is the opening of the episode is Luffy, again, his moment of, I miss my crew, and I wish that they were here right now, and just sobbing, crying to remind us of how he's feeling. And then we go over to the weird, like, Nightmare Before Christmas sort of world that Zoro wound up in, which is called Gloom Island. I had completely forgot about these creatures that show up, which are eventually revealed to be apes of some kind, but the way that the lightning flashes initially and highlights them, they really just look like straight up monsters. And eventually the fight that they get into, I guess maybe they're meant to be baboons. I'm looking at the markings on their faces, but they are really, really intelligent. And the way that they're conversing with each other, even though Zoro can't understand them, it suggested to me that there is potential for him to break through and understand what it is they're actually saying to each other, and like maybe befriend them, maybe ally with them. One of these dudes is like literally breakdancing, not breakdancing like actually, but that's what it looks like when he's fighting Zoro and kicking him. And they are wearing armor and they've got actual weapons. Like it's not like they're just over here shrieking and clawing at him. They have distinctly human characteristics. And when Zoro takes down one of these, all of the guys on the side who are watching, there's like a bunch of them that start cheering in a way that felt almost like a spectatorly fashion. Like they were going, yeah, that's right, show him. And I was like, wait, why are they not also jumping him? As his back is turned, one of these pulls out a fucking rifle and takes a shot at him. And I was like, excuse me? What are you playing with swords for then? You've got fucking guns? Like, and he uses his twister move to send a bunch of them like flying out into the woods. But guys, just, the overall vibe here, when they appeared, I thought it was going to be a fight with monsters. And instead, it's like these sort of humanoid, they're not just baboons. They have a look to them that is more developed, at least like on their legs. They're just very human-like. And at one point, they open up his wound, and Zoro is sort of like, is that what they were trying to do all along? As he's standing there and he's sort of fading in and out, one of them is coming toward him with this huge hammer and sends him flying into a wall. This cracked me up. He just like collapses, and when he's down there, what is her name? I keep wanting to say Prosecco. But she is like, you're not dead, are you? And he says, now is not the time to annoy me. And she's like, I was actually worried about your welfare, and you're accusing me of being annoying. So yeah, why don't you just go get eaten by monkeys? What the fuck do I care? Basically. And Perona, thank you, Florian. Florian says he's seen One Piece at least 20 times. Oh my God, that has, like, when did you start watching One Piece, Florian? I feel like that has to be, like, the course of decades, right? Like, so Zoro is sitting there, and he is in this, like, okay, what am I going to do? I definitely can't beat these guys. And he's just sort of considering. And as he is, all of the monkeys, apes, whatever, I think they're called human drills in the subtitles. I'm not sure how you're meant to say that. But all of them get this really weird expression on their face. And I was like, did I miss something? What's going on? And I didn't miss anything. It's just them acknowledging something that is about to happen because they have the ability to sense it. Zoro also senses it, and it turns out to be Hawkeye Mihawk, who is here with news. He apparently tracked Zoro down explicitly to give him this information. Not entirely sure why, except for just like the sake of honor, I guess. But it's interesting to me that, like, despite really doing his best to try and kill Luffy, like, really going for it, he is this committed to getting the word out about what has happened to Luffy. A strange character, this guy, kind of sending mixed messages here. So then we go to the story with Chopper at Birdie Kingdom. So, y'all, this is just so difficult because these native characters, y'all, like, there was little enough with them that I was able to just sort of scoot on past it. But I just really can't with these guys. Like, first of all, there's the distinct, like, minstrelly vibe of the way that they are illustrated, with the lips and perfectly round eyes and everything, which is really wild. The very, very exaggerated features that keep them from looking even entirely human. Their accents, which are the 1910, like, movie equivalent of Native American accent. It is just really, really bad. It was so hard to, like, get through this, and it's a shame because otherwise I felt like the story could have been somewhat interesting. But because they're played as being idiots, like, they, even though Chopper is talking and they can clearly understand him, this guy is saying it's clear that Chopper can't talk. And one of the other kids has to be like, well, then how come you understood what he said? And it's just a back and forth sort of, like, it's meant to be farcical, but because of the other baggage associated with this depiction, it just feels super racist. And it is just deeply, deeply uncomfortable. Like, the whole thing just felt so wrong. So I'm going to try and just sort of do this one quickly. there is some sort of illness spreading through this tribe of people, and there is a particular plant that is really effective in treating it, but they aren't given access to it the way they normally are because of these birds. And it's unclear to me whether they were able to access it before and then the birds like moved in and stopped letting them in, or if it's that the birds used to let them in and now they don't anymore. I think it's like that second one. But the drug that they use, the herb, when Chopper got injured because they were about to roast him, he got like burned on his little butt and his little behind. And they give him this herb and he rubs it on it, like immediately seems to heal it. So he is just really interested in this as well as a doctor, and realizing that this is something that could help them and that these people will definitely actually die from this. He starts to get pretty invested. So he decides that he's going to go and speak to the birds and ask them politely about letting in these folks to get the herb. Now, the problem is that despite the fact that Chopper can talk to animals, the animal has to like want to actually fully communicate with you in order for that to work the way that it needs to work. So he goes up and instantly gets this sort of like weird statement from the bird of like, what do you mean they'll never get treasure? What treasure? And as soon as he says that, this other bird comes careening in from the other direction and is attacking him and sends him flying. And I was just like, birds, he's just trying to have a perfectly reasonable conversation. Why can't you just talk? He's not a person. And he explained to you why they want to get up here. He says, why do you hate humans? Why do you want them to suffer? And he uses a rumble ball in order to keep himself from really getting hurt the way that they're tossing him around. Meanwhile, the tribe has decided, like, we didn't want to do this, but we're going to have to take all these birds out because we're trying to protect our family, you know? So we're going to do whatever we need to do. And Chopper is like on the ground. He turns back into his normal self after this rumble ball wears off. And he puts himself between the explosion. I don't know exactly how this, because it looks like an explosion. I don't think it's meant to be, but somebody sent a spear heading towards one of those birds. And basically, Chopper, like, took the hit, but there was a look to it like it was on fire or something exploded. And as he's falling, Chopper is like, neither of them will listen to a single word I'm saying. And he's falling to what would have been certain death, but then gets saved by that adorable chick who is riding on the back of its mother. I'm assuming mother. And I love Chopper. All right, listen up this time. This big round chick, you guys, is absolutely the best. I love this weird marshmallow bird. Peeps, take note. If you're going to make marshmallow birds, this is what they should look like. Basically perfectly spherical with a tiny little like curl of a feather on the front, a beak and eyes, and that's it. That's it. Florian says, maybe this is blank, but these birds are ugly. Or maybe this is just me, but these birds are ugly. Florian, it is not just you, babe. These birds are super fucking ugly. They're very unattractive. They really, really are. They're sort of like this weird mix of the silhouette kind of a flamingo, but the coloring of like, there's a bird in Mexico that I'm thinking of, the quetzal, I think it's called. And, the whole thing is unattractive put together. Those long snaky necks. They have almost a Big Bird thing going up with the feathers all around their faces at the top. Just, yeah, do not like it. But yeah, it turns out that these birds like treasure, and that they had collected treasure because it was just something that they enjoy, sparkly things. And eventually there were some fucking humans who came and stole all of their shit and chased them away. And that was what they thought these humans were after as well, was just treasure. So when they realize it's the plant that they need, these birds are literally like, I was going to say hand delivering it. I guess you'd say beak delivering. And Chopper is like, all right, well, that's great, guys. As soon as you've got more of that ointment, I could definitely use some. And then he just like passes out. And when he wakes up, he goes outside, and some of the humans are actually giving the birds sparkly things to say thank you, you know? This is something that I would love to try. And I know that, like, I have the information to set this up, but not the will yet. I think I've even got the supplies. But there are people who have, like, made a little landing area for crows that have a sort of open space that's easy to see that reflects sunlight. And they put items there, and evidently crows, being very smart and sort of like social and transactional, will bring you things back. If you leave them like cool little shiny trinkets that interest them, they will find stuff and bring it and leave it in place of what you left outside, if they have begun to feel that there is a real relationship between the two of you. And it's been sort of fascinating to me, and I wanted to try it. But also, I'm starting a vegetable garden this year, and I just don't know if I want to be asking crows to hang around. I feel like they're going to eat my tomatoes, and I'm pretty protective of my tomatoes. I just don't want any of that action, I don't think. Anyway, we then go to just a very brief moment of Chopper opening the newspaper and his eyes widening as he realizes what the front page says. And we don't actually see, I don't think, any more of him. I think that's all we get. But, yeah, the birds, that could be a good possibility for him, because he's definitely, we've seen him ride them a couple times now. So, let me go to Nami. I'm going to be honest. Nami's storyline here is the weirdest. It's not just the fact that the story itself has so many fantastical elements with the weather stuff. She's currently working in a weather field where they grow weather balls, as if they're cabbages. But also that this is an island that's so absolutely perfectly suited to her interest compared to everybody else, where they have wound up has been, I won't say it's irrelevant, because ultimately I think each of them were sent there on purpose because of whatever their specialty is and their need for exploring that side of themselves. So, you have people who are being oppressed, like Robin was, and she needs to help them. You've got people who are exploring their feminine side instead of just sexualizing women with Sanji. You've got I don't know what you would say, because we still haven't really found out what's going on with these baboon creatures. So I'm going to save that one with Zoro. But the fact that they knew, well, I was going to say they knew who Mihawk was, but maybe they didn't. They may have just felt his aura and been like, okay, we're out. Then with Chopper, he winds up somewhere that has like this incredible plant that has all of these healing properties. Those are all feeling pretty on the nose. Usopp's, I don't really get why he's wound up where he has, how that has relevance to him specifically, but maybe that's coming. And like Frankie's is pretty self-evident. But this with Nami, how much she's like, I won't say she's uninterested because she's not. She wants to know, but it's like, I guess it's just part of her character that despite being interested and wanting to know and like allegedly being willing, Nami just fights tooth and nail the whole time in a way that is just making everything harder on her and everybody around her than simply communicating would have done. And so she's over here working in this field and they're just standing watching, and she gets so irritated at the fact that they're like criticizing her, which she should. And as she's doing this, the newspaper is dropped in one of their hands and she spots the front page and like grabs it out of his hands and is reading it. And later on we come back and find out that she has started to take she has started to try to leave the island, but she's treating it like she's escaping a prison. Now, I don't recall if she did anything that warranted her having to absolutely stay there. Forgive me if it's just been so long, there's been so many things to keep track of. But the attitude that they take with her attempting to like get away, I was sort of like, wait, why are they upset about this? So we jump right from there, though, before any of that even happens, to Usopp on the island eating. And, y'all, I'm over it. I'm over it. I don't want any more of it. I don't need any more of the, like, fat jokes. There's even a, what if you get diabetes? Yo. Anybody out there who has this like urge to make a diabetes joke about somebody who's gaining weight, let me just ask you to please not do that. Okay? Now, I don't have diabetes. I'm actually, my blood sugar is like kind of amazing considering how heavy I am. But people who actually do have diabetes are very, very sick of this joke. And there are plenty of people who have a type of diabetes that you are born with that isn't something that comes upon you later in life. And it's irrelevant in their case, but people don't make that distinction. And it's just tired. And it's like ableist. It's just like low-key shitty, There's just a sort of implication with it that if you read it backwards, is anybody who has diabetes brought it on themselves kind of vibe. And it's just gross, like there are so many factors that play into developing diabetes, and some of them are choices, but some of them are also like sociological, economical, cultural. So just mind your own business and don't make those jokes because it's tired. It's just so tired. And the overall thing here is eventually that he sees the newspaper and isn't listening to Heracles when he's trying to tell him, you've got to like get it together, dude, until he sees the newspaper and realizes that like Luffy's in trouble and he has been sitting around eating this whole time when his friend is in need of support, and that Luffy would have been there for him during his hour of need. So he absolutely needs to, fix the problems that he is creating for himself here and get on the road. Then we go to Sanji, and he gets the newspaper, and it's very funny the way they do this, where they have him get so angry as he reads it that all of his makeup melts off and like his fake eyelashes fall off as well. So he's just yelling, like, what the hell is this? He has one of the briefest moments out of anybody. And then we go to Robin, who is being gifted like a huge coat because it's still snowing, and she's still wearing one of those like jumpsuits that's unzipped to her navel, basically. And let's see. Oh yeah. What's her name? Bunny Joe, I think. She's like, all right, Robin, we all know who you are. You have to come with us. And Robin says, I understand that, but I have to see all of my friends soon. I have to go to them. When you say your friends, are you referring to the Straw Hat Pirates? Because we happen to have a bit of information about them that might be of interest to you. And that's how she gets her info. Then we go to Frankie, and he's over here in this laboratory, delighting in the feeling of cola filling his veins? Is that what I want to call it? And let's see. Oh yeah, here's this polar bear. I forgot about this whole thing. This thing is so crazy looking. It punched me straight into a fridge full of cola, and then I torched him. So I'd say everything's pretty cool. And as he says that, a fax comes through. You guys, I could not, believe that was the way. It makes sense, honestly, but the fax, that got me. That was cracking me up. Then we go to Brooke, and he's over here writing a bunch of music, singing, and these weirdos are listening in and saying how, terrifying the lamentation is that he's writing. He's summoning his legions to place an unspeakable curse upon the entire long-armed tribe. And as he says this, we see Brooke inside, and he thinks, I just lost my train of thought. And I think it's because this guy was speaking on the outside. But yeah, he just gasps. And we go inside, and he says 45-degree slant. Wait, shouldn't it be 60? I don't understand what that even means. I don't know what that, that joke, I have no idea. And then, is this my punishment for all those panties? Which actually was pretty funny. I hate to admit, but it was. But that slant, I don't get what's going on with that joke. I'm so sorry. I feel like I really missed something there. Florian says, you made me look at this in such a different way with Nami. I mean, I love her, but why is she so mean to these weather wizards? That's what I'm saying. It's just weird. This should be that she gets that she's so excited to learn, and that other people who are able to tell her lots of new information and talk, that's the sort of thing that should make her nerd out and get excited. And instead she just seems pissed, and I'm like, why are you like this? What's going on? But anyway, so this is when we have the delivering of the information from Mihawk to Zoro, and we go back over everybody's faces as they read the news, and clearly all come to the same conclusion that we need to get together with him as quickly as we can. And then we just see the back of Luffy and jump to the next episode. Everybody is beginning their attempts to get to where they want to go and to find him again. The island that we start off with it's so weird because these guys are on the shore. Well, they're on a cliff and they're watching a sea king just get the shit beaten out of it in the water. And it turns out to be Rayleigh, who is fucking this sea king up. But the way that this was really reminding me of, and I'm wondering if this is who he was picturing when he wrote it, but in Cradle, there is a North Strider character who fights sea serpents while underwater, and has a kind of aesthetic that I would not say is unlike Rayleigh, actually. He's meant to be like dark-haired, I believe, but jacked, attractive, almost a sort of like unkempt, almost could look like he sleeps on the streets if it weren't for the fact that he has clearly been enjoying peak nutrition and gym equipment kind of look. So that was who, all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, is that where he was getting the sort of North Strider thing from, you know? But yeah, he comes to shore and he's just right in front of Law, Trafalgar Law, and is like, oh yeah, I remember you from Sabaody. And he says, so, funny story. Things got kind of rocky in the storm. My ship sank, so I had no choice but to swim here. And I had been wondering what was up with him and where he was. And there was a mention, like, I think that we saw him briefly on the island. And I just assumed that he was holding himself apart and not getting involved. But evidently, he did try to come over. And he hit a snag. So you killed that giant thing with your bare hands? And Beppo says, I have actual bare hands, and I couldn't do that. I loved that joke so much, you guys. Oh, that was just chef's kiss. That's a good fucking pun, man. I love that they just decided to go for it with that one. Appreciate you. Oh, man. So this is when he says, something tells me Luffy's on this island. Is that correct? And understandably, a little bit later, I can't remember the name, Nyo? Is that her name? The old lady has a name with the same lettering as the way that she pronounced things. And I can't remember how it goes, but she understandably is sort of like, okay, here's my issue. The fact that Luffy is here and he was able to find him so easily. Yeah, they're buds, so it's fine that he's here. But if he was able to put two and two together that quickly, then somebody else might also. And that could be a fucking problem. Like, the whole point of keeping him here is so that he can rest. But we wind up getting some more info about exactly where he got this information. So, let's jump over to fucking Boa Hancock is absolutely off her rocker at this point. This bitch is giving like crazy girlfriend, that meme, you know. She's like doing finger puppets of herself and Luffy talking to each other. Your girl needs a vibrator and some an array of other men to remind her that there are other fish in the sea. She is just so... Whew. It's weird because, like, I want to call her dickmatized, but she hasn't fucked him. So that's not what's happening. And in a way, I can understand how, like, the thing that's going on with her is sort of similar to what happens with Edward and Bella, right? Where he reads everybody's minds, and here comes this girl whose mind he can't read. And he's like, word? And that just immediately gets his attention and has him more interested. So she has this power where she can just make men fall in love with her, and then Luffy has no reaction. Of course, that's going to make you just more interested. It's sort of a default thing that anybody who manages to sidestep something that has worked consistently for you is going to make you stop and pay attention. But, oh boy, oh God. Florian says, I love this, but I will have to send you the Japanese version. She is killing it here. Ooh, I am very interested. My heart is aflame with affection. I can feel the desire building up inside me. And as she says that, she like wraps her arms around herself and like wiggles her tits. And I was just like, y'all need to calm down. And this old lady says, you are hopeless. I told you any man can remember your name, but that doesn't mean you're married. And Boa says, oh, then what is marriage? What else is there to do? And Nyo says, and I'm going to call her Nyo because I can't remember her name. That is a difficult question to answer. And that's the end of that scene, which I thought was hilarious. That like, just being like, I remember your name. And that's enough. And when somebody's like, so you need more than that for marriage? And somebody's like, I can't think of anything. Like, okay. Well, I feel like you should have been able to think of a lot of things right immediately off the top, but sure. And I'm really curious how long this is going to go on. Like, not in terms of, I'm so sick of this plot line with Boa that I want it to end. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, Luffy is not into her, but I don't feel like he is into anybody. I don't feel like he's against her. He's just like viewing her as a bud, the same way that he views everybody. And there is a part of me that I could see, like, I could see Boa being like, so, my love, I've made our wedding, and we're going to get married, right? And I could see Luffy just being like, oh, well, I mean, I wasn't planning on it, but yeah, sure, let's go ahead. And just not really caring about it because it's so irrelevant ultimately to anything else that why shouldn't he get married? Who cares? Like, what does it matter? You know? That said, he obviously isn't staying on this island. He will be leaving. So the only solution to that is either that Boa is okay with having a husband who travels the high seas and leaves her for long periods at a time, or she comes with him, which I do not see happening. That's just not, it's not happening. It just, that would mean that she's become like a part of the crew. And there's no fucking way. I'm just thinking how fucking Sanji would react to her, and yikes. So I have no idea where this is going. Like, I don't think Luffy is just going to break her heart. I feel like whatever is going to happen has to sustain this illusion for her and make it an ongoing thing, because there are so many things that can be done if you've got somebody in the position she's in terms of like her being a warlord and being on Luffy's side and willing to defend him. You don't get rid of that advantage, right? Like, we're going to want to hold on to that so that he can keep taking advantage of that. But the question of them being a couple has to be answered in some way. And I really don't know what that's going to look like. So that's my main question at this point. So we go back to Jinbei, who is carrying Luffy on his back. And he goes out to where the submarine had been. And that's when they see Rayleigh. And he's like, they can't have just left, did they? So, yeah, Rayleigh says, oh no, Luffy says, I was going to use my beaver car to go to Sabaody since my friends are waiting there. And he asks Rayleigh if he has seen them, and he says, no, I don't think that they have made it there yet. And I handed my beaver card to Shocky, so now no one can find me, and I can go wherever I please. Jinbei, for his part, is really impressed with the fact that Rayleigh is here. This is like, you know, a dude who has a lot of power, and Jinbei was not prepared to meet him and is just literally sweating, and it's adorable. Luffy gets his hat back, and it's got these 3 cuts in the top. And this is when Jinbei is like, all right, so what's happened to the submarines? And Rayleigh says, oh yeah, he took off and he left a message for Luffy, stay in bed for 2 more weeks. And come on now. That's just never happening. I mean, I'm just sort of imagining that he needed Luffy to stay in bed for 2 more days. And he decided to say 2 weeks, the way that you tell somebody that a party starts at 7, when actually it doesn't start till 8, but they always run late. So you just tell them a different time. Like, that's what I'm going to headcanon happened here. That he was like, all right, I need him to like lay low for 2 days. If I say 2 days, within like 4 hours, he's going to be sprinting across the fucking island. So let me say 2 weeks. And then maybe I'll get 2 days out of him with that. You won't, but I can understand trying, you know? So this is when we go to a bunch of guys who are with Law. I keep wanting to say Law like by itself, but I feel like I gotta say Trafalgar Law every time, because Law by itself, it just doesn't sound like a name, you know? It's just... So, anyway, they are once again underwater, and he is saying to the other guys that are in the submarine, I wonder what the Dark King is up to. It seems he is drawn to another man with the will of D. What is... I'm going to go ahead and assume that that is like the D initial. I know that this is not Oda's fault. Slang being what it is, changing and developing over time, there's no way that he could have foreseen this, right? I don't think. Maybe. But the will of D... Florian's in the chat saying, no, do not say it. All right, I won't say it. But you all know what I'm talking about. And we could have just done any other letter. We could have done any other letter. And it would have been less hilarious. So maybe this is for the best. Maybe we want it to be the most hilarious. But, you know, damn. So why is he being drawn to men with the will of D? I'm so sorry, you guys. I can't not think this is funny. What am I supposed to do? Anyway, Nyon, that's her name. I was so close. So, this is when Rayleigh is greeted by all of the lovely women of the island, and the only person that Boa notices is Luffy. She doesn't even say hi to Rayleigh until like way later. It's as if she is noticing him for the very first time, which is really, really funny. And she has brought this huge feast for Luffy and doesn't want Jinbei to eat any of it. And it's like, you can have one bite. And he says, how generous. I wish that Luffy had spoken up for Jinbei, because I feel like all it would need from him was, of course you can have some. And Boa would immediately be like, oh, whatever he says, you know? But this is when Nyon is bringing up the whole thing with Luffy and how it was easy for Rayleigh to find him, apparently. And he's like, no, don't worry about it. So the first one who helped him escape in the archipelago told me that he would have been headed in this direction. So it's when he says escape from the archipelago, I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. And indeed, we go back and see Kuma, and he leans in and whispers, I work for the Revolutionary Army. Because Straw Hat shares a connection with Dragon, I will let his crew escape. And Shocky, in this moment, says, oh, that's quite the twist. And I do really enjoy her, like, just actually saying that out loud, because it's funny. But yeah, that was like, my suspicion here. I feel bad. Kuma evidently isn't, I don't think Kuma exists as himself anymore. And that fucking blows, man. Anyway. So we see Shocky saying, where did he send our monkey boy? And him saying, beats me. Kuma says, I apologize for my abrupt manner earlier. Can I speak with you for a moment? I love how it's showing him coming up to the building that Rayleigh and Shaka are in, but Kuma is so fucking humongous that not only can he not fit inside, but only 1 foot fits on the walkway outside. Like, he can't even stand in front of the door because he's so huge. It's like being like, come and knock at the door of a mouse hole and stand in front of the door. Like, it's just, the proportions don't make sense. But yeah, this is when he says, I don't have much time as myself. But that's like the last thing we get straight out of his mouth. And I was just like, Rayleigh says, he told me what direction he'd sent him flying in, but that didn't necessarily even point to this island. But then some details came into light when I was looking into the events leading up to Marineford, namely the impel down prison break caused by Luffy and the others. I spent a lot of time puzzling over how Luffy was able to infiltrate such a heavily guarded prison. It made enough sense that Luffy got there by stowing away on a Navy ship with Hancock, but it still didn't add up. And we find out that Shaka was the one who was like, you know what? What if Hancock fell in love with Luffy immediately? That would actually make all of these pieces that seem to not fit anywhere fall into place immediately. And understandably, Rayleigh was just like, that would have been hilarious, but no, that's certainly not what happened. And coming into the present, he's like, that's that women's intuition there for you. This is one of those that I was talking about this with Owen the other night, because we've been watching a lot of Poirot lately. And it was a really great moment because somebody attributes a woman being correct about something as women's intuition. And Owen paused it and was like, I really fucking hate that whole, like, conceit. And I was like, oh, why? Because it dismisses women's actually putting together, like, logical clues and indicators and information as simply being, like, us intuiting out of nowhere because we couldn't possibly be smart enough to actually use our minds. And he's like, yeah. And then he presses play. And the next scene is like somebody is saying to Poirot, well, he said it was women's intuition. And Poirot is like, I don't believe in women's intuition. She is using facts, and maybe she doesn't even know what those facts are, but she knows something for sure, and she just doesn't have the language to express that. And I was like, oh shit, thank you very much. Like, it was a nice little moment of approaching it from a different point of view, but still being like, yeah, but that's some bullshit. But anyway, I'm sorry, guys. This, the way that Boa is standing over Luffy. Do you like it? Please say yes. I brought it all for you. Oh my God, girl. Get a hold of yourself. So then he says, all right, it's time we got down to business. Luffy, earlier you said you're heading back to Sabaody to meet up with your crew. Do you still plan on doing that? And Luffy's like, well, yeah, why would I not do that? They need me. And Rayleigh's like, yeah, maybe they do. I'm not sure that's the place you want to meet up, though. That didn't go super well for you, if you'll recall. And the moment here where Luffy is like thinking back to what went down, it's so weird because, okay, I'm going to back this up a little bit. Everybody has like this really grim expression on their face as if they're also remembering what he's remembering. And I was like, why? Boa Hancock is even looking like she's on the verge of tears here. But the question that Rayleigh poses to him is, in the condition you're currently in, if you face the foes at Sabaody today that you faced last time, do you think you would do any better? And that's the fucking question. He says, do you want to be reunited with your friends only to endure the same fate? I would imagine that your answer is no. So let me offer you some advice. Do with it what you will. And when he says this, Luffy like pulls the brim of his hat down, and we don't get that like answer. We don't get the second part of that statement, that what the advice is. We go back to Usopp for reasons I don't understand. I pretty much talked about Usopp's deal more than it deserved. So I'm going to move right along from that one into the next one and talk about what's going on with Nami and trying to steal this weather balloon. Also, we have this the Trafalgar Law Pirates, and they have wound up, at Maiden Island as well. They're sitting there just like trying to fish and chill out, and wondering how Luffy is doing. And Trafalgar Law, at one point, they hear a noise, and he like looks over, and it's almost like the guy who's fishing thinks that it's the fish that's making this sound, but it's the wind that's rippling this sail above their heads. And they're all like, wait a minute. I'm seeing this and I'm like, didn't I see this already? Yeah, I did. Hold on. This didn't bring me back to the next episode. Oh my God, you guys. I'm trying to find like where I left off because I know that there was another. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay, back to our captain. Oh, I'm describing this scene and I'm thinking to myself, this feels very familiar. Why is this? Because I had already talked about it. I'm so sorry, y'all. Sometimes this is what happens. They reuse footage, right? With the show. They'll reuse like the animation of a moment repeatedly. So when something pops up and it's the same animation, I don't immediately jump to thinking that I've already talked about this, that this is the same scene that I discussed already, because sometimes it's not, and they just are recycling footage and it's fine. So yeah, completely misunderstood that. But yeah, there's talk about like Luffy and needing time to heal, and like the fact that going back to Sabaody is probably not a good idea for him, but his crew doesn't know that he isn't going to be there, and they will probably try and head back there to meet up with him. I was sort of wondering if like they would maybe begin to understand how dangerous that was and that he might be more likely to be at like an outlying island somewhere. But I don't even know how, like that would be very tricky to set up, I feel. And he says, I have to go see them. They're waiting for me. A promise is a promise, right? I have got to go to Sabaody. And of course, we see Hancock getting all teary-eyed because he's proposing to leave right after he had just got here. And let's see. Oh, God. The fucking unruly guest thing with Nami. So she and this is the part that I was talking about. These two old men are sort of chasing after her and panting. And one of them says to the other, like, because they both collapse on the sidewalk. There's something very Oz-like about this place. Is it truly, truly true that young lady tried to escape? I don't understand why they're phrasing it like she's a prisoner. And this other guy replies, I'll explain, we're too high up for that. Which I'm assuming is just about, like, where on this weird sort of setup they're located, and the fact that she isn't supposed to be able to just, like, jump off. We see several people attempt to stop her, and her just, like, flying past them. And she eventually manages to, like, hijack one of these ships, but evidently doesn't have enough experience using one to steer it adequately. So she takes a balloon. She has her supplies in her backpack. She manages to, like, get away from the island for a moment, and then the whole thing goes nuts. The steering wheel starts to spin in her hand, and as much as she was descending a moment ago, it begins to, like, lift really, really quickly, like accelerates so that she falls down. And the whole thing is out of control. And when she is able to, like, look up again, she sees the ship coming straight for a bunch of dudes in these fields. And I just really was like, there are so few women in these communities, guys. It's all dudes all the time, everywhere. It's insane. But they all have the look of, like, a classic Merlin, Dumbledore type wizard. And it is pretty enjoyable. I can't help but, like, it must be fun to come up with all of the different versions of this same exact outfit. And when these guys, so he's talking about, is she tried to escape because of, after she got locked up after taking the thing. And so that's what they're talking about here, because they're gathered around like a cell, and the guy whose ears she has, Hasheda, I can't remember his name, but he is trying to insist, like, oh, you know, she can be lively, but I don't feel like she would do that. Haredas, here he is. And all of these people are, like, just screaming at her. At one point, one of them just says, "We're old and you're scary," which I did think pretty much summarized the situation, actually. And she is getting super impatient because of the fact that she feels, I have a perfectly valid reason to get the fuck out of here, and you guys are slowing me down. But here's the thing, Nami. You could have just explained and asked for help. Why are you like this? Why do you know what I'm saying? I just don't understand the need to be this mean all the time. So what she decides to do instead is make a tearful plea about Luffy and get them all, like, feeling sad for her and use it as sort of a weapon so that they immediately unlock this thing. And as soon as they say we're sorry and unlock it, she jumps out, grabs Haredas, and heads for another one of these ships. And evidently has taken him hostage because he's going to be able to help her steer, I guess, as well. And it just bummed me out because they're saying she pretended to cry to take him hostage, but, like, she ends up genuinely crying a little bit later. And I just never like the whole, a girl fakes crying to get her way and trick people. It's just a little too close to, like, women crying wolf about a lot of other stuff. You know what I'm saying? It just always makes me, like, a little bit leery. But yeah, so she's like, the last thing we see is her fleeing with him. I'm realizing I'm over time. We have like this really bizarre, I'm going to just like talk about this last bit here, guys. Frankie needs a ship to get back, and they don't have any ships of their own. So they keep talking about this dude. I can't remember his name, but the one that's the inventor who was like way ahead of his time. They keep saying like, oh, Vegapunk, that's right. That he probably has some designs that you could use to like piece something together. And they send him into this laboratory thing that he had been to before, and it didn't go super well. So the way the episode ends, he's warned as he goes in not to press the self-destruct button. And he's like, why the hell would I even want to do something like that? Which is a good question. But then when he gets inside and he starts running around and finding blueprints and getting impressed with the advanced quality of Vegapunk's work, he comes across one of these big buttons on the wall that has a skull and crossbones on it. It's got and he sees it and he's like, oh, sweet. He's got a pirate mark too. It says danger in all caps above it. And he just pushes it. And then the entire place explodes and self-destructs. And it's like a big area. It's, the way that they show it. Now, I have no doubt that it's not nearly as big as it looks, because that's the way it always goes with the show. It looks like half the earth broke apart, and then it turns out it was like a 15 square foot area. But we have him at the end coming, like, talking to these guys. What if I did press that self-destruct? You wouldn't, like, hold it against me, would you? And they just yell, of course we would. And then the narrator says, news of this incident quickly spread across the world, and history would remember it as Baltimore's nightmare. And that's the end of the episode. What? That is the weirdest ending, I think, of any of the episodes so far. It's so abrupt and strange. Oh my God. It was so frustrating. Florian says, okay, I love Frankie and how this all ends. This is one of the best jokes in my opinion. I wish I agreed with you, Florian. It's just my anxiety, it's just, there was only one thing that you weren't meant to do. Ugh. But anyway, and Frankie in the sky. Yeah, that was pretty funny. It was his silhouette. All right, I've got to wrap up. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. Appreciate you all a lot. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.